What's up? It's Tom. In case you missed it, I did a live stream reacting to the Twins trade deadline, but I wanted to circle back with some more kind of concrete, developed thoughts on it. It's tough to live react. I will say Jeff Hoffman was on my targets list. So a guy obviously familiar with him, his time in Toronto, but a guy who's been around here a bit. Today's moves in one word, and there were moves today. The Twins only made one trade, but they certainly made more than one move. Direction. Direction is my word of the day for the Twins. Adding a closer, and I do think Jeff Hoffman is a closer, and keeping Ryan Jeffers, Trevor Larnach, Joe Ryan, etc. firmly gives the Twins a direction. It feels like it's been a really long time since we could say that. You might say last trade deadline, they picked a direction. They did sell, but I wouldn't say they ever truly fully committed to a rebuild or anything. So that's not, to me, that's not really a direction. Obviously, they didn't try to compete this year. They fell into it. But right now, this is as clear of a direction the Twins have been pointed in a while. Now, that doesn't guarantee you're going to win. Just because you're trying to improve, you're trying to win, doesn't mean you're going to get there. But also, relief. I am relieved. I was pretty stressed out, after that Dean Kramer move. That had me really nervous. That was poor value. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it also just felt like, okay, they have picked a direction. Are they just going to really go into that and not really care about value at all? And what really got me nervous was that the Twins were reportedly really hard after Zach Neto of the Angels. Now, Zach Neto, good shortstop, 20 homer guy. Some of the defensive metrics are hit and miss, but I don't want to, that's a whole nother conversation. A legit MLB shortstop with both some defensive and offensive upside. We'll put it that way. But that sounds great, right? Why didn't they get him? Controlled through 2029, so free agent in 2030, they would have had to have given up a ton. If you think the Twins had to give up a lot for Jeff Hoffman, they would have had to have given up, Kalen Culpepper plus potentially for Zach Neto. And maybe that would have worked out, maybe not, but this team just isn't in that big of a push right now. And I'm just not a Zach Neto guy in addition to that. So, I was just that they were working on something that big and discussing that big. I was a little nervous they were going to do something really crazy, and they didn't. So I was relieved of that. I wish they would have added another player. That would have been nice, and especially another starting pitcher. We'll talk about that in a minute too. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself on this one. We're going to cover a lot. I have a lot of thoughts now that's sunk in for a bit. But I said moves. Keeping the band together, that absolutely is a move. Not making a move there is a move. The strengths of this team are the lineup and the clubhouse camaraderie. Keeping the team together is the best way to keep those things in sync. Not trading Ryan Jeffers, not trading Trevor Larnach. They're already just hanging on, not even inside the playoffs right now. Minusing from your MLB picture, to offset that would have been a challenge. So, don't worry about making room for prospects. A lot of people wanted to see Larnach traded to make room for Walker Jenkins. Opportunities are going to present themselves. Guys get injured, or, Walker Jenkins and Kalen Culpepper aren't exactly tearing the door down right now. If they get super hot, conversation changes. If you think about it, really only at the moment, only Ryan Kreidler and Alan Roden are in between them and starting. And, no disrespect to those guys. They've been helping the club, but that's not going to keep those guys down, okay? Don't worry about it. Holding on to the big league pieces also keeps the organizational depth stronger. In case you missed it, Walker Jenkins came up limping after making a catch on the warning track on Sunday evening, stayed in the game in the ninth inning, finished out the game. Hopefully everything's fine. But if you were to trade Trevor Larnach away and count on having Walker Jenkins, just keep in mind you had one less piece in the puzzle. So that depth is important. That usually we think of that coming into play more on the pitching side, especially with how things have gone for the Twins. But it's also an element to the position player side as well. And People who are like, how could they not trade Ryan Jeffers? He's a pending free agent. Think of him as a deadline addition you got for free. Tons of these teams traded for pending free agents, guys who are on rentals. Nobody bats an eye. So why does the selling team, if they have a pending free agent, it just automatically you have to trade the guy? No. This is essentially a deadline addition the Twins didn't have to trade for, Ryan Jeffers. And, I've made it clear I would give him the qualifying offer. And if he rejects it, guess what? You get a draft pick. So he's not leaving for nothing if you do that. And if Tom Pollad's going to back up what he says, that should be absolutely on the table for the Twins. And if he accepts it, it's a one-year deal for $23 million. I'm not sure how better the Twins could spend just $23 million in 2027. Not a $23 million a year contract over several years, just $23 million in 2027. That's not... The free agents are expensive. So, but again, it's really easy to spend Tom Pollad's money. It's really easy to play finger painting with Jeremy Zoll's budget. But anyway, moving on. Jeff Hoffman, okay, former Sire of Fort Myers candidate. That's his top thing I think about with Jeff Hoffman. He was in Twins camp in 2023, did not make the team out of spring training, so he opted out and has been remarkable since then. Closer, absolutely closer. He has 33 saves last season, plus 2 more in the postseason last year for the AL champion Blue Jays. Has pitched in 21 postseason games, one of the best relievers in baseball the past 4 years. A clear upgrade to the weakest part of the roster. He signed a 3-year, $33 million deal prior to 2025. So this is a guy who had suitors to get that kind of a contract as a relief pitcher, and I can tell you he had suitors on this trade market as well. This is a guy you had to give up something good for. Is Jeff Hoffman the Twins closer? Well, here is the total year numbers for him, Yoendrys Gomez, and Andrew Morris. Now, keeping in mind that does include the Gomez stats from prior to getting to Minnesota, but bulk of his stats are here. Most of these stats really tilt toward Hoffman, and I think the FIP really illustrates that well. 2.49 FIP for Hoffman, 2.98 for Morris, and 4.50 for Gomez. So, yeah, I think Jeff Hoffman is easily the Twins' closer. Now, whether Derek Shelton kind of plays that traditionally or not, I'm not sure, because he has not done that. Even though Gomez has been sort of the closer, the assumed guy to close out games, Derek Shelton has not really stuck with the script. He's going to play matchups some. So I'm not sure what the plan is with Hoffman there in terms of whether or not he gets all of the saves. But he absolutely is the number one reliever in this bullpen. I don't think it's close. I think Jeff Hoffman is one of the best relievers in baseball. Let's take a look. Louis Varland. Everybody misses Louis Varland. I miss Louis Varland. I love Louis Varland. I'm sure there's some people wondering, well, how come they couldn't get Louis Varland? Totally different conversation on the money side, on the age side. It's also really easy to look back and say, well, the Twins should have kept Louis Varland. The Twins should have kept Yohan Duran. Agreed on all those things. Again, we can look back and say it was a mistake, and I think Tom Pollad has done so. Maybe not about that, but definitely about the post-2023. Anyway, point being, can't go back and redo the past. But this is Jeff Hoffman versus Louis Varland since June 1st. 23 appearances for both of them. And, Louis got him beat on a couple of spots here. The FIP, the XFIP, the Sierra. But Jeff Hoffman stands up really well against Louis Varland since June 1st. So that's a good stretch of Jeff Hoffman pitching well again. And I put this out there because I know Twins fans know how well Louis Varland has pitched. So, I'm just trying to put that up as, look, this is a guy who is pitching just as well. Jeff Hoffman is ranking among the 383 pitchers with 30-plus innings. This is not cherry-picking out his poor start. This is for the full season. He ranks 8th in K percentage with 34.9, 9th in K- walk percentage, 22nd in FIP, 10th in Sierra. This is, again, out of a sample of 383 pitchers. This is not just relievers, too. This is also starting pitchers. Also, literally, the worst batting average on balls in play of those 383 pitchers. He has a 389 BABIP against. So a lot of that struggle early in the year was just balls finding their way through. Yeah, and his year-to-date numbers are really good, despite that slow start, despite that horrible batted ball luck. Again, the worst BABIP of anybody with 30-plus innings this season. So keep that in mind when taking a look at his year-to-date numbers. Bottom line, Jeff Hoffman is among the very best relievers in baseball right now. Combination of the slow start, he had a 6.31 ERA through May, and Louis Varland's ascension resulted in him losing his closer role, yes, but he is still an elite bullpen arm. This is about as good as you could have imagined at the trade deadline, and again, he was one of the very few players that I mentioned as targets. I think there was only like 7 or 8 guys that I really threw out there. Of course, beyond that, there were other guys I could see as upgrades, but those were kind of the guys that really had caught my eye. The return, you're going to have to give up something good. Again, this is a guy who signed a 3-year, $33 million contract. That means teams find this guy valuable. Other teams were after Jeff Hoffman today. You are going to have to give up something uncomfortable. You're going to have to part with something. Dasan Hill, he's something. 20-year-old left-handed pitcher, exciting arm talent with shaky control. Blue Jays fans, hi. I'll give you an intro to your boy Dasan. A lot of his stats, you just look at him and you can tell. You can tell by the numbers. This guy has exciting arm talent with shaky control. 35.8 K percentage, but a 17.2 walk percentage. Among the almost 1,300 minor league pitchers with 40-plus innings this year, he is in the top 98th percentile in K percentage and the bottom 95th percentile in walk percentage. This is about as extreme of a player as you can find anywhere. A 5.80 ERA with a 1.73 whip and a 7.4 walks per nine. Only 45 innings, too. If you're trying to be a starting pitcher, that's not a great sign. And that's not really due to health. I think he's missed some time here and there, but he's not had like an injured list stay. He only has 3 outings of 4 or more innings. Was the number 5 prospect on our Limestone Pipeline preseason list. He slid down a bit to number 9. Now, part of that is because of the recent draftees, but, it's hard to look at him. He's both. He's both his upside and his downside. And how that's going to come out, I don't know. But I will say this. If the Blue Jays get Dasan Hill as a big league rotation piece, I will tip my cap to them. Again, he's only 20 years old, so he's got all the time in the world. Really slim kid, really skinny, and I don't think his frame can really put on more weight. So I've always been I've wanted to see innings out of him, and we are not getting innings out of him. And he's been relatively healthy. It's not like he has missed big chunks of time. He just is having tons of 2 and 3 inning outings. Again, still, I want to make it clear, still an exciting prospect, number 9 prospect on our midseason update, even with the draftees in there. So this is a really tantalizing arm talent. Even if he can't maintain as a starting pitcher, even if he ends up in the bullpen, he has a special arm for even a reliever. High 90s left-handed pitcher. Those guys aren't that easy to find. So, I totally understand why Toronto would be after him. I also understand why the Twins would kind of look at him and part with him. Bottom line, I really wish they could have moved a bat kind of in this value instead, like a Hendry Mendez or someone like that. Even though Mendez is in AAA, but I also understand why Toronto maybe wouldn't have wanted that. Because, from my perspective, I've been hoping that, okay, trade the bats, keep the arms. Other teams are probably saying, give me the bats, or give me the arms, give me the arms, give me the arms, keep your bats. So, maybe it was the Twins generally did a really good job of keeping their arms, their arm talent, but it was it wasn't realistic to think that they could get one of the big targets without giving any pitching up. So Dasan Hill gonna be kind of scary if he puts it together. Could be a very good pitcher, but it's really there's a lot. It's not just a long way to go. Even if he was pitching well in high A, you could say, well, there's a lot of climbing to go. Double A is a whole different animal. He's not even pitching well in high A. So, again, if he does realize his potential, it's going to be a huge feather in the Blue Jays cap. and a fun addition. We'll kind of circle back to him in a sec. John Klein, 24-year-old right-handed pitcher, ranked number 28 on my July 1 prospect list. Recent draftees would have pushed him outside of my top 30. I was actually surprised the Twins added him to the 40-man roster this offseason to protect him from the Rule 5 draft. Not in the major league picture despite plenty of opportunity in the Twins bullpen. This was a golden opportunity for John Klein to prove he could be a big leaguer with how much uncertainty there is in the Twins pen. Again, he's already on the 40-man roster, so that wasn't a hurdle. Did make his debut, but didn't pitch well enough in St. Paul to get additional looks. And this is another Minnesota boy headed to Toronto. So two deadlines in a row. We've sent a homegrown boy out to Toronto. Bottom line, though, a nice depth arm, but really doesn't have it for a starter or a reliever, really. Similar, I would compare him to Travis Adams is kind of what I think. A big league arm. So that's always handy to have, but I don't think the Twins are really going to be missing John Klein, even though he could turn out into being a bullpen arm if he continues to develop and kind of tweak some things. Then the final piece, Demiri Pena, 20-year-old second baseman / left fielder, ranked number 39 on my July 1 list, so he would have been pushed out of even my top 40 with these draftees. His early numbers in the Dominican Summer League drew Luis Arias comps because this guy just never strikes out. Ever. He still really doesn't. But he's really slipped performance-wise since then, which isn't too uncommon for DSL guys. Very fun and unique player to watch. But he posted a 688 OPS in 154 games with Fort Myers and has a 637 OPS in 25 games with Cedar Rapids. And it's not like there's other skills beyond his hitting abilities, very limited defensively, does not have the athleticism to play shortstop or center field, doesn't have the arm to play third base. Bottom line, you're completely fine with tossing this guy into a trade package. So how about what's next? How about the other trades? So now that we have the big picture, Jeff Hoffman is a first division player. Okay. Multiple teams were trying to add him. You have to give up something uncomfortable to acquire a Jeff Hoffman. I'm fine. I am fine with what they gave up, which might surprise people compared to how I reacted to the Dean Kramer trade. Which, give me a sec on that. But when you're acquiring, again, a first division player, I think Jeff Hoffman is one of the best relievers in baseball, as in top 20 or so relievers in baseball. Not like the inner circle of the elite, but I think he is really good and proven and durable. This is his fourth straight season of 50 appearances. I think that's something to point out as well. So when you're getting one of those guys, you have to understand a bunch of other teams want that guy. You're going to have to give up something good. Twins gave up something good. I'm okay with it. And I think that's going to surprise some people. AJ Minter was a great fit, and the Twins didn't have to give up anything uncomfortable for him, unlike that Jeff Hoffman trade. And they needed bullpen help. And Minter is a nice piece there. So I liked that trade as well, even though I think the Mets did really well in that trade. Dean Kramer is the one that I do not get at all. The definition of a fourth, fifth starter was going to be either pushed out of Baltimore's rotation or off their roster altogether. The Twins needed someone like this that could provide innings, with some innings insecurities with like kind of Prelip and some other guys, but they overpaid. They absolutely overpaid. Looking at some of these rankings of Jonardo Reyes, like Baseball America and ESPN have a power ranking of all the prospects traded, and like Reyes is above both the guys that the Cubs gave up for Gausman. So like they could have gotten Gausman. Yeah, they could have. So, and he would be a step up above Dean Kramer by a lot, I think. Because you're comfortable starting that guy in a playoff game. You're not starting Dean Kramer in a playoff game. If you are, he's maybe going through a lineup one time, and you're going to be shaken the whole time he's doing it. Now he will have some good games. He'll have some good stretches. The splitter might be a nice piece for him. That's a new development. Maybe the Twins are leaning into that. I do think, and I've been fair about this, I think his 2026 numbers are like funhouse mirror. Like he's not going to give up that many home runs. So I don't think you can just point at that and be like, this guy stinks. The guy I've been comparing him to is the 2024-25 version of Simeon Woods Richardson. That's a major leaguer. That's a rotation guy. You don't want that guy pitching in the playoffs for you. And for the Twins to go after that and to part with a guy I'm uncomfortable with dealing away in Giancarlo Reyes, that was a bad trade. And I think, again, people would probably be surprised at how strongly I reacted to that trade and how cool I am with this Hoffman trade. But not every prospect is the same. Not every trade is the same. They are lottery tickets. People have kept saying that about Giancarlo Reyes. Well, he's a lottery ticket. Okay, so is Dasan Hill. Okay, some lottery tickets cost more than others. Some of them have a jackpot higher than others. So just to say that, it's such a lazy, there's way more nuance to things than just to say someone's a lottery ticket. Every prospect is a lottery ticket. Okay, so that doesn't mean you just give them away for less than what they're worth, or regardless of what the jackpot is or whatever. We should get out of this analogy because I hate it. But so it's not just, there's got to be a middle ground between trade all the prospects, who cares, and don't trade the prospects for a reliever. And again, Jeff Hoffman has another year of team control too, which is pretty handy. But let's just, the overview, how about the whole deadline? If we include the Tommy Nance trade, which I think we can, even though that was a bit earlier, the Twins added Jeff Hoffman, Dean Kramer, AJ Minter, and Tommy Nance. That's a nice, that's not going to strike fear into anybody, but that the Twins really needed a lot of pitching help. And that's a lot of pitching help for especially a bullpen, before Andres Gomez and Andrew Morris, got their footing. Man. And there's, I believe in those guys, but there's no guaranteeing they're going to keep this up. So that's a big deal. And I understand kind of looking at the sort of shopping list of other teams that maybe it's certainly not as impressive as some other teams, but the Twins got a lot better. They gave away Dasan Hill, Giancarlo Reyes, Billy Amick, Ryan Sprock, John Klein, Bruno Agbayani, and Demiri Pena. It's definitely some names on there that could come back to bite them, but they didn't give up anybody in the top 5. They didn't give up any of their best prospects. They have a nice draft class coming in to, supplement what was already there. I think I said on the live stream, just pretend your new Dasan Hill, just pin your dreams on Ethan Walksman, the teenage high school guy they drafted out of Colorado in this year's draft. Maybe he'll have just as much upside as Hill, but better control. And of course, there's a world where you can have both. They could have kept both, but it's not like there's nobody else that might kind of take that mantle from Hill. Charlie Soto is going to pitch eventually someday, I think. He's also in that mix too. But Giancarlo, as much as I'm really intrigued by him and liked what I saw early about his Fort Myers, it is kind of it's notable that as an 18-year-old, he's already playing right field, and it's not because the Muscles have a higher prospect in center than him. So that's, something to keep eye on. He is athletic. He is fast. I saw him do some crazy running on the bases, but at 18, maybe he's going to kind of grow into more strength, but grow out of that speed and just be a corner guy, which really does set the bar on what you need to do offensively. And again, has barely played full season ball. So the Twins have just an abundance of corner outfield. I was fine with trading Giancarlo Reyes if it came down to it. I just hated that value for Dean Kramer. I think you could have either gotten something more exciting for Reyes or given up something way less, the jackpot way lower for Dean Kramer than Giancarlo Reyes. So, chances are pretty good that's not going to end up biting them. But they could have made a better trade than that. And I don't know what the kind of what was the rush to get Dean Kramer. I mean, it's not like he made a start in between the acquisition and the deadline either. But overall, I think that's 3 good additions and one that is going to help the team. But I thought it was a bad trade. Dean Kramer's. It's better to have Dean Kramer than not have Dean Kramer, just to be super clear. So it's not like I hate that addition. Again, I would have rather seen them also get a playoff caliber starter, but we'll see. Another thing to add is that Tom Pohlad spent money. He should have just done that in the offseason, I put up there. If the Twins had actually tried to replace their bullpen. That was my thing about last deadline. Sure, trade the relievers. You have to replace them then. You can't just assume all of your fringe prospects are going to fill out a bullpen, or all of your waiver claim minor league signings. They're going to fill out an entire bullpen. They just thought that magically they would build a bullpen, and it's actually gone better than I would have assumed in a way. But again, we just got to move on from that. That's not the way it worked. The Twins took on salary, $3.6 million for AJ Minter. That's kind of part of the equation, and why I also say the Mets did really well in that trade. The Twins took on all that money. I think a lot of other teams would not have touched that. So $3.6 million for AJ Minter, $3.37 million for Jeff Hoffman for this year, $1.75 million for Dean Kramer this year. This is also in addition. Jeff Hoffman's going to have his 2027 salary, but Toronto's paying some of the $11 million. We don't know how much. And then if Dean Kramer, if the Twins offer him arbitration, if they tender him, he'll possibly make around maybe $7.5–8 million next year. So that's adding money. And, the Twins need to continue to do so. I'm not going to build Tom Pohlad a statue or anything, but this is unusual for the Twins. We're seeing good signs. We're seeing momentum. I'm still very suspicious of Tom Pohlad, but I think he gets it. He understands the situation. He understands the assignment. I think he understands how he can change the narrative. Whether he's going to continue to do things to push that direction, I don't know. I don't trust that he will. But every little, I'll give him credit for every little kind of thing that goes forward. But I will still keep a close eye on him. We'll see. But this was a good step, in my opinion. And you can disagree with this from a baseball standpoint. But I think if we're going to want the Twins to try to win, if we're going to want the Twins to spend money, I think it'd be ridiculous to be like, oh, they should have sold. Even if we look back from now and say this was a bad deadline, and things don't work out. I think you have to kind of take the stock of things in this moment and kind of understand the situation. I think too that this was beyond baseball. The Twins do need just to create more. And I was worried they were going to turn into this too far, but they need to get something going. They need to show this fan base something. They need to change the narrative again. And this helps that. Absolutely, this helps that. It's certainly much more than either doing nothing or trading guys away would have. Absolutely. Twins are in the hunt. They should be trying in a down AL to stay in the hunt. Some additional thoughts. I like this Jeff Hoffman trade much better than that proposed Trevor Larnach for Brian Abreu deal. Abreu was a pending free agent. Trevor Larnach has been a productive hitter. That wouldn't have even. I don't think they would have made the Twins better even if you put Walker Jenkins in. So now they have Trevor Larnach. You can always bring up Jenkins. There's no rule that Larnach and Jenkins can't be on the roster at the same time. And then you get Jeff Hoffman for another year. So, yes, you gave up some prospect capital for that, but I think, the Twins system is still going to be a good system without those guys, I guess is a good way I'd put it. So I like the Hoffman trade much more than I would have liked that Larnach for Abreu deal. Another thing I'd say is try to imagine Dasan Hill if we didn't know Dasan Hill. Imagine if you were a Blue Jays fan looking at this trade, you'd look at the prospect rankings and maybe get excited, but then you look at his numbers and be like, well, what the heck is going on here? And I can tell you from watching a lot of Dasan Hill, there's a lot of outings he has where it's like, how is this guy even in pro ball with how he just cannot find the zone? Great stuff. Again, one of the best strikeout pitchers in all of the minor leagues. A prospect, a top 10 prospect, no doubt about it. Enticing arm. But again, just try to imagine what you would, if the roles were reversed, think of what you would be thinking about Dasan Hill if you didn't have a lot of that context on him. And then these teams, how is it that these two front offices get all these deals done? It's by 2 years from now, I think half of the Twins roster will be former Blue Jays and half the Blue Jays roster will be former Twins. The Twins also acquired Tommy Nance from the Blue Jays, in addition to obviously the prior deadline trade. So these teams these front offices must really communicate well and really have good understandings of each other's needs and systems. But what did you think? That's my take. Again, I think it's valuable to kind of take stock in the moment because it's so easy to have 20/20 hindsight vision. But even though I think I like the way this turned out, if anything, I wish the Twins would have made another trade or two. The more trades they made, I think the more it made sense to have traded Dasan Hill or to have acquired Dean Kramer. So I think I would have made some more moves, especially looking around and seeing the, pretty reasonable prices some of the other guys were going for. There were a lot of trades I looked at and I thought, man, the Twins could have matched that. They have a deep system. They have a lot of bats in particular. And I know some teams, they were going after pitching. You could tell by those packages, but there were packages where teams went for, like, again, the Gosman trade was 2 hitters that they got. So not everybody was only hot for pitching. Going off on a tangent now, but that again, that's I think I liked what they did. I liked that they picked a direction and stuck with it. I was not going to be really happy if they did a thing where like, oh, we added 2 pitchers or even 3 pitchers like in this one, but we also traded Trevor Larnach away and Ryan Jeffers away or something crazy. But we got some MLB guys, just sort of like a 2 steps that way, 1 step that way. It's like, well, what is going on here? Are you guys actually trying or not? I like that there was a definite direction taken, but I wish they would have done, even like a on the fringes trade would have been could have helped as well. But I wish they would have gone after a playoff starter. That would have been a huge tilting trade for me to be really excited about what they did. So, and those guys on expiring contracts aren't really that crazy. Even Freddie Peralta didn't go for that much. I know he's very unreliable, but that still would have been an exciting and a guy that you could put out there in a playoff game. And hey, maybe he gets shelled, but you could also get a gem from him. So anyway, what do you think about that? Let me know. I don't think there's a wrong answer either. The Twins got some good help, but they definitely gave up some pieces. So if you're somebody who doesn't like what they did, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. But if you want to, catch up on Twins prospects, now that they're not trading anybody else away, we know where we're at. I think Jamie and I will probably try to do an updated list now that there's a couple spots in there, a couple spots in our top 20 that were taken out from these deadline moves. So check that out. $4 on Patreon. We also share a bunch of stuff that's free out for everybody on there too. But thanks for checking this one out. Oh my goodness, this is going to be a long one. Again, if you want to see the live reaction, check out the stream. We'll talk again soon.